Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends. Welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. So this is actually a pretty interesting week, especially in the world of Standard. We're hot off the heels of the Pro Tour that ended on Sunday. Today is Saturday at the time of recording. Now, in last week's episode, we already saw the impact the Pro Tour was starting to have. We'll see a continuation of that this week. Also, there was a huge Standard announcement. If you want the details, check out my video about that. But basically, in a nutshell, what happened was Wizards kind of went back on their thought of having Standard rotate out more than one time a year. So now a Standard rotation is only going to occur once a year. It's going to be in the fall, which means it gives an extended shelf life for cards from Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch, which is having an impact on the market, and that's pretty interesting to see too. So having said that, let's jump into the cards for this week. And we're going to start off with Standard, and let's look at the cards at loss value, starting off with number 5, Liliana, the Last Hope. She's down 347 to 3886. Now, Liliana's still seeing tons of play, huge part of the Delirium deck. Don't feel like this card's just falling off or anything, but what you're seeing here is the fact that more and more packs are being opened. The folks that want Liliana's for their decks are getting her, so she's just reaching a point where she's going to start to come down a little bit. I mean, she's still very highly priced at between $35 and $40 right now. That's quite a bit for a modern day card in the print runs that modern day sets see. So she's going to start to creep down a little bit, and I think that's just kind of normal at this point. Coming in number 4 is Nissa Vital Force, down $358 to $12. Now, Nissa is seeing a little bit of play still in Standard. Now, it's mostly out of sideboards, or it's just kind of one-ofs, that type of thing, but she is seeing play. $12 still feels maybe a little high, though, for the amount of play she's seeing. I think she'll come down maybe around the $10 mark. At that point, $8 to $10 is probably a good pickup for her. Coming in number 3 is Metallurgic Summonings, down $449 to $529. Now, it sounds like a big drop, but there's an interesting story behind this card. Right before the Pro Tour, MTG Goldfish did an article with a budget deck, basically an Izzet Spells deck that used this card as a linchpin. And hey, budget decks that are cool and can win, they can definitely gain some momentum. And in this case, this card really saw a pretty hard spike right before the Pro Tour. Now, since the Pro Tour, a lot of folks have turned their attention to those Pro Tour decks, and this card's fallen off a little bit. I don't think this was unexpected. Last week I mentioned that this will probably take a pretty big dip this week, and it did. So if you're looking to pick up this card, you can probably even wait another week or so. It should continue to go down. Coming in at number 2 is Aetherworks Marvel, down $557 to $917. Now, this had a great showing at the Pro Tour, and it saw a pretty big spike with the excitement of the Pro Tour. But now that things are starting to settle, we're getting a few days away from the Pro Tour, this card's starting to come down a little bit off that hype. But it is a card that's seeing a lot of play, and I think it's a good long-term investment if you want to build this deck, obviously. So don't be afraid to pick these up if you can find them for even $6, $7, $8, which I think you should be able to. Now that they're coming down so quickly, could be a good pickup if you want to play this. Finally, coming in number 1 is Chandra, Torch of Defiance, down $763 to $22.38. Now, Chandra, wow, she has really crashed pretty hard. Here's the deal, though. She is seeing a little bit of play here and there. I mean, she is showing up. Sometimes it's 2-ofs, stuff like that. I have seen her show up even in 4-ofs in some decks, but for the most part, she's just not living up to the pre-release hype. Because of that, she is crashing pretty fast. I still believe there is a deck for her somewhere at some point over the course of the next 2 years that she's going to be in Standard, not to mention other formats like Modern. She will find some sort of home at some point in the meta. So my thought on this card is give it a few more weeks. She's going to continue to go down. You might be able to pick her up for $10, $15, probably closer to $15 at some point in the not too distant future. At that point, I think she'll be a good pickup because I do think at some point she will find a home. All right, let's move on to the Standard cards that have gained value this week. Coming in number 5 is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, up $297 to $16.94. Now, first off, notice this is a Battle for Zendikar card, so that's not hurting it in any way, considering the more recent announcement. However, this card's also seeing tons of play. I mean, key part of the Aetherworks Marvel deck, and also Modern just running wild in all sorts of Tron decks there. Not to mention Legacy Eldrazi. It shows up there too. So this card's seeing a lot of play in a lot of places. This is a great long-term investment, and I am afraid, especially considering this has now found a nice foothold now in Standard, I do think this card is just going to continue to creep up and creep up. So I would pick this up now. Don't wait on this one, especially now that its lifespan in Standard has been extended another year. This is only going to go up, I think. Coming in number 4 is Declaration in Stone, up 301 to 779. This is just the staple removal card right now in Standard for white decks in general. And there's a lot of good white decks out there. Most notably, that comes to mind, the Vehicles deck right now. The Boros Vehicles deck's running this, and there's a lot of those decks out there in the field. And not to mention all the other white decks that are also playing this card. Coming in number 3 is Thing in the Ice, up 324 to 950. Izzet decks, very, very popular right now because of the Pro Tour, especially Izzet spell style decks. This card is not only seeing play in Standard, but also in modern Izzet spell style decks that have been doing pretty good recently too. So this is another one. If you can pick this thing up for under $10, and I think you can still find these around probably for $7, $8, I would get a playset of them. I do think in the long term, this is going to be a card that keeps popping up over its lifespan, not only in Standard, but now also in modern. Coming in number 2, Torrential Gearhulk, up $493 to $24.99. Last week, I think I said by this weekend this card would be up around $30. I was a little short at $25, although it did get up to about $28 about 24 hours ago or so. It's just starting to come down a little bit now. Again, it's riding the success of the Pro Tour, but this card showed up in tons of places in the Pro Tour. Of course, it was in the Izzet style spells decks, but really a lot of decks running blue are just going to run this because it's just a fantastic card. Okay, maybe it's not Snapcaster Mage, but what it does do that Snapcaster can't is still be a big force on the battlefield as a 5/6 creature. This card's awesome. It's going to continue to see play throughout its lifespan in Standard, I have no doubt. However, keep an eye on the price tag on this one. I think it's going to start creeping down now. Once we get a little bit further from the Pro Tour and the hype subsides a little bit, the price tag will start to come down. And also, Kaladesh is going to be one of the most open sets probably in the history of Magic. So you do have to keep that in mind. Even though this is a mythic rare, there's going to be a lot of packs open of this set. There's going to be a lot of copies of this card out there. So don't lose sight of that. If you have to pick it up for a tournament this weekend, well, you're stuck. You're probably going to have to pay a higher price for it. If you can wait, I'd wait a few weeks on this one. Coming in number 1, Gideon Ally of Zendikar, up $9.12 to $29.95. Now, a couple things going on here. Gideon definitely saw a little bit of a spike from the announcement a few days ago. The fact that Gideon's going to stay in Standard now for another year makes this a better investment for people that want to invest in a long-term deck. And this is probably the perfect card if you're interested in doing that. This card has seen play since it's been introduced. And it's funny because every time a new set was about to come out, everyone kind of thought, well, okay, Gideon's not going to be quite as good as he was. Okay, well, now this next set's coming out. Gideon's not going to be quite as good as he was. Okay, well, now we're moving on to another block. Gideon's not going to be as good as he was. Guess what? Every time Gideon has gotten better, probably more than anything. Now, Kaladesh brought vehicles, and Boros Vehicles decks are a great home for Gideon, among other decks as well right now in the Standard world. So this card's just going to continue to show up and just gain momentum. It is spiking a little bit hard right now due to the most recent announcement and its success at the Pro Tour. That was another place where it had a great showing. So I, again, would wait on this one just a little bit. I think this hype will calm down just a tad, and you can probably pick these up in a couple weeks at $25. But I do think the hype on this is kind of at its peak right now, so keep an eye on it. I think it will start to come down a little bit over the next few weeks, and if you can wait to pick these up, I'd probably wait at least a couple weeks, kind of see where it goes in the market. All right, let's move on to Modern. Now, we saw a lot of excitement this week in Standard. I can't say that we're going to see the same now in Modern. This is a very slow Modern week, and it makes sense as people turn their attention to Standard and building new Standard decks, especially with the announcement that certain cards are going to be in the format longer. A lot of folks are going to be focused on Standard, and they're going to, in some cases, even be selling their Modern cards to pick up some Standard cards for their decks that they are trying to put together. Now, the other thing you want to remember, which will make Modern a little bit soft right now, is Modern Masters 2017 is coming out in March, which really is kind of right around the corner. And we're going to start hearing within a few months what cards are going to be in that set. That's going to make people a little bit shy about buying some of the big ticket cards right now. Coming in number 5 for cards that lost value is Noble Hierarch. This is the complex version, down 560 to 5575. This card spiked really hard the last couple of weeks. I felt like a little bit of an unnatural spike, maybe a small buyout. But in general, this card sees tons of play in a lot of places. Also, this is a candidate for a reprint in Modern Masters 2017, which could be another reason it's getting a little bit softer right now. Coming in number 4 is Horizon Canopy from Future Sight, down 567 to 6766. This is actually the cheapest we've seen this card in quite some time. It's a pretty nice little drop for this card. Again, it just goes to show you how soft the market is for some of these big ticket cards. Coming in number 3, Liliana of the Val, down 574 to $95. Again, Liliana, we haven't seen her under $100 in a while, so this is strong speculation that she is going to show up in that set. And I'm almost 100% sure this card and Snapcaster will probably be 2 of the mythics in the set. So this one's going to be soft, I think, for a little bit. Coming in number 2, Crucible Worlds 10th edition version, down $577 to $57. This one I'm not so sure if it will show up in Modern Masters or if this is a card you'll see someday in an Eternal Masters set, just because it doesn't see a whole bunch of Modern play, and I think they're trying to stick with the theme of if a card sees more Modern play, it ends up in Modern Masters. If it sees more play in other places, then it will see print in an Eternal Masters. So even though this is a little bit softer than it's been, I really don't know if we're going to see a reprint of this one anytime soon. Coming in number 1 is Scalding Tarn, down 656 to 8044. This actually spiked a little bit earlier in the week, and partially due to the fact that some of these Izzet Spells decks were doing really well in Modern, and then it just started to come back down a little bit. So this is just kind of normal stabilization for this card. There is, again, some speculation that enemy fetches will show up in Modern Masters. I really don't think that's going to happen. I think they will show up someday in a standard set, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. So these things are kind of in this weird limbo. People are a little scared to invest in them because they are very pricey, and I think everybody knows at some point they will be reprinted. But if you're at a point where you're trying to put together a Modern deck and you need a card like this, then there are folks out there in the market to pick them up. So they are kind of staying relatively steady right now, but I think they're going to continue to creep up as time goes on. All right, let's move on to the Modern cards that have gained value this week. Now, this is where you're going to really see very, very little change. And whenever you have a week where there's such a small change in the market, some of the cards on the list are even going to feel very random. So let's get through it. And we're going to start off with number 5, Copperline Gorge, up 73 cents to $9.99. I do think a lot of folks are going to pay a little bit more attention to the fast lands in Modern now that they see how good they are in Standard. These are great cards, and they have always seen at least a little bit of play in Modern. I think they'll start to see a little bit more. Coming in number 4 is Seedborn Muse, and this is the 9th edition version, up 88 cents to $23.34. This was on the countdown last week, so it sticks around, but again, 88 cents, not a huge increase. Coming in number 3 is Doubling Season, up $1.09 to $44.50, and this is a casual favorite, has been for quite some time. Great commander card. I hope it sees a reprint in Modern Masters 2017, but I don't know if it has a big enough Modern footprint, at least in this day and age now that we have an Eternal Masters release as well, to see printing this time around. Coming in number 3, Norwin the Wary, up $1.12 to $5.76. Now, $1.12 is not a big increase, but this is a big increase percentage-wise for what this card's valued at, and this is kind of an unusual one. Now, this does see a little bit of fringe Modern play sometimes in the Boros Soul Sisters deck. Now, you don't see it a whole lot, but every once in a while it shows up. So it does see some play, but for the most part, this to me is more of a commander card or a casual player's card, and there's just been some interesting things this week in the market for Boros cards. There's some random Boros cards that are going up in value, even some plains and mountains that are going up in value right now. So I almost feel like maybe an individual or a small group of people maybe just buying a whole bunch of random Boros cards right now for some reason, and that could cause a little bit of a increase like this. So I think this is more of an unusual blip than anything. Coming in number 1 is Mox Opal, and we haven't seen this on the list for a bit. This has gone up $1.26 to $39.50. This is the Scars of Meriden version. Now, of course, sees tons of play in Affinity and Modern, as well as Legacy and Vintage play. So this is just a very popular staple. And again, not a lot's happening in the market this week. So an increase of 126 is really small. So this could have almost been probably any card. All right, let's move on to Legacy. And before we get started, just a quick thank you to everyone who responded to my question last week about what we should do with the Legacy segment in the show. And it sounds like most people want it to stay the same. So at least for right now, that's what I'll do. But always open to hearing the feedback. And as the market changes and things change, we could revisit it in the future. But for right now, we'll keep it at the same. And let's look at the cards that have lost value this week. Coming in number 5 is Tundra Unlimited version, down $32.30 to $350.91. Coming in number 4, City of Brass, down $32.81 to $107.97. Arabian Nights version of the card, of course. Now, this saw a spike, went back down, saw another pretty big spike over the last few weeks, and looks like it's coming back down again. Card seems to always settle around $90, $100, even though it has seen some pretty swingy spikes. Coming in number 3, Underground Sea, Unlimited version, down $34.45 to $514. Coming in at number 2, Tropical Island, again Unlimited, down $47.57 to $338.39. Again, we see this type of thing from all of these dual lands almost every week. And it's just kind of normal ups and downs for cards. Once they start getting into the $300-$400 range, changes of $30-$40 really are kind of just normal stabilization. And finally, coming in number 1 this week, Volcanic Island. This one took a pretty big hit, though. Revised version going down $41.46 to $266, with the Unlimited version going down $6.45 to $449.96. All right, let's look at the cards that have gained value this week. Coming in number 5 is Unlimited Armageddon, up $19.10 to $75, and I still don't know why this card just goes up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. Partially, it could be folks playing the old school format, even though that is a very small group of the community, and also Revised is legal in that format, so there is a cheaper version of Armageddon in that format as well. So I'm not really sure what causes this to happen. I will say just be careful of this card if you're looking to pick it up and it's on the higher end of its swing. Coming in number 4 is Jazam Jin, and this is up $59.89 to $592.19. I think this is just one of those cards that's going to gradually grow and grow and grow over time. It's just so iconic. It's kind of like the centerpiece card of Arabian Nights, which is a very iconic set to begin with. And again, old school players out there, this card is a huge part of that format. There's a black deck that runs 4 of these. That could influence it a little bit too, but I think this is one of those cards that will probably settle in now around $550 or so, but will continue to creep up. Coming in number 3 is All Hallows Eve, up $67 to $192.50. We've talked about this card the last couple weeks. Obviously the target of a buyout, and hey, no better time to buy this out than around Halloween time, right? But there's a lot going on with this card. I mean, you got the Christopher Rush art, which looks incredible, and you don't see art like that anymore on Magic cards. It's a unique card, it's a rare card, and on top of all that, it's a real world reference, which again, that just kind of stopped early on in Magic's lifespan. So this is a great card to just kind of pick up because of its uniqueness. Now, this will eventually come back down off of the buyout, but it's not going to go as low as it was prior to the buyout. Coming in number 2, Candelabra of Tawnos, up $90.51 to $575. This one's been down the last few weeks, so it's just starting to bounce back. And finally, the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, up $125.64 to $1,299.97. This is another one that saw a pretty big dip last week, and guess what? Just kind of rebounded again this week. It's sitting right around where it usually falls. This card probably is truly valued around $1,200 or so. Having said that, that's the market watch for this week. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks as Standard kind of settles in. You kind of past the Pro Tour. I think some of the cards that saw the big spikes will continue to come down a little bit, become more affordable. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, don't forget, Kaladesh is probably going to be one of the most open sets in the history of Magic. I mean, think Battle for Zendikar. That set also was opened a whole lot, right? So you do have to keep that in account when you start to think about the values of some of these cards. Even the great cards and even the mythics, they're going to be a little softer than maybe cards from... even the Shadows over Innistrad block, but definitely you can't really compare these with older cards at all anymore. One thing, if you want to make a comparison, if you're familiar with the sports card industry in the 90s or the comic book industry in the early 90s, where print runs got really high and value started to go really low and collectors started to get out of the game, I think that's what we're going to start seeing in this new world of Magic. So be very careful making expensive pickups when you're looking at cards that came out in the last year or so, because I think these print runs are going to continue to be very high. Having said that, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality content for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't yet had a chance to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.